Barber. I see you now. All right. The new Salvation Army Bermuda Divisional Commander, Major Rob Kerr. Mrs. Beverly Daniels, the Executive Director of Social Services for the Salvation Army. Members of the BHC Board and staff. The Salvation Army has been active in Bermuda for more than 125 years, providing various services to our community, but most notably, for over 55 years, the Salvation Army has provided quality transitional housing and support programs for the most vulnerable in our society. This project actually began in 2019, when the site was in need of urgent repairs and upgrades. In fact, it was the #1 issue on the agenda when I first met the last divisional commander, Major Sandra Stokes. At that time, Public Works civil engineers carried out a structural assessment of the buildings and agreed that only a few needed to be demolished and replaced, while others required some upgrading. That first phase of refurbishment was championed by 2 local philanthropists who through their effort and contribution to this worthy cause, made those works possible. The Government of Bermuda, through the Bermuda Housing Corporation, engaged in a public-private partnership with Mr. Jim Butterfield, who's with us today, and Mr. Kirk Kitson to rehabilitate and refurbish the shelter buildings. And he is with us today to witness the conclusion of this work. It was agreed that the government would match the funding that was raised by them to upgrade the facility. A methodical approach was undertaken to repair the salvageable buildings one at a time, while the buildings that were beyond repair were to be demolished. At the same time, building works were in progress. Consideration was given on what style of replacement building would be ideal for the site. Many transitional housing options were considered. The Salvation Army and the BHC agreed on what the replacement buildings would be, the new container building design. Significant work, including the replacement of roofs, repairs to walls and foundations, and extensive plumbing and electrical work, have been completed. 2 residential buildings housing the men and women of the shelter have been remodeled and refurbished, and the central building housing the administration staff, common areas, and kitchen were repaired. That work was completed in December 2020. We then turned our attention to the new builds, but COVID came and essentially progress for a year was slowed considerably during shelter-in-place and lockdowns. Work progressed, however, with plans being drawn, sourcing of containers, surveying of the property, demolition of the old units, consultation with the Departments of Planning, Health, Environment, and the Fire Service, building supply source, piling engineering, and preparation for construction to begin. In October 2019, the first discussion of container housing started with a plan to have 3 blocks, which would have 7 rooms with 2 persons per room for a total of 42 persons. These were to be single-story buildings. The estimate at that time was $450,326 per block, for a total of $1,362,978 for the project, but foundation costs and customs duties had to be added. These were to be pre-configured containers with only the addition of furnishings needed. In January 2020, a request was made for grant funding of $1 million to be set aside for the upgrading of the Salvation Army shelter, and were approved in the 2020-21 budget. In March 2020, a review of the estimate was completed, but this time the containers would be purchased empty and assembled in Bermuda. These would be 3-story blocks with 10 beds per block for a total of 30 beds. This estimate was $348,000 per block, which included $48,000 for foundation and steel, total for all 3 blocks of $1,912,000. This estimate, however, did not include any freight or duties. The projects department started work on design in January 2021, and went through 2 different plans, having agreed to the final plan in June 2021, which is the two-story blocks with 14 single rooms in each block for a total of 28 units that we are opening today. As we all are aware, COVID is having a significant impact on the availability and cost of materials. This project was no different. However, the most significant increase in the project is for the pile foundation's increase to $551,580.75 from the original estimate of $44,000 due to the massive increases in the price of steel and the level we had to drive the piles down before hitting a solid surface. 12 pile foundations were driven to depths greater than 90 feet, with the deepest reaching 151 feet. So the total to date, including the remaining contract sums to be paid, is $1,820,000. Material rates increased by 50 to 150% in 2021-22 and greater than 150% in early 2022. The labor and engineering costs were $628,295.52. The pile foundations were $551,580.75. Local materials were $359,829, and overseas materials and shipping were $258,826.08. To sum it up, a myriad of challenges were encountered over the course of the project that derived from COVID and global supply chain issues. During the 3rd and 4th quarters of 2021, further escalation in the materials cost ensued, and unfortunately no sector was spared. Paint, steel, lumber, plumbing, electrical, door hardware, adhesives, etc., and delivery times were stretched beyond anticipation due to the high demand for materials. Additionally, local labor resources were already stretched as contractors were busy on various sites throughout the island. This dilemma of increasing costs and supply chain issues will affect other projects currently underway and future ones. We are planning for this eventuality, but I anticipate that this will be an unpredictable feature of construction works for the foreseeable future. So we arrive at today. The project is completed late and over budget as explained, but it is still a day of celebration. The work is done to an outstanding quality and raises the bar for the way we cater to those in need of shelter. I am particularly delighted that we have been able to deliver on our commitment to the Salvation Army and those in need. Ultimately, as it pertains to the needs of Bermuda's vulnerable community, the government's primary objective is to ensure that the men and women in need of shelter and support have a safe place for refuge. We take another step in that journey by delivering on this project today. Before I conclude, I must comment on the relationship between government and the Salvation Army. Successive governments have not always supported the work of the Army, both financially and with repairs to this site. This government made a decision in 2019 to honor that commitment, as the work of the Salvation Army helps our people. The Minister of Social Development and Seniors, Minister Furbert, also provides financial support through her ministry. This commitment should and must transcend partisan politics. So I again publicly declare that we will continue to support the Salvation Army in this effort and put down a marker for future governments to do the same. I also offer the thanks of the government and people of Bermuda to the Salvation Army for the great work you do in this community. Finally, I'd like to thank all those involved in the construction of this project, but particularly BHC Project Manager, Mr. Keno Farbert Jacobs, for all the work he has done on this project over the last 2.5 years, from researching the replacement buildings, securing planning approvals, organizing the bidding for the work, managing contractors, dealing with supply chain issues, and all the other things that crop up during a project such as this. Thank you, Keno, for a job well done. Now, before we cut the ribbon and tour the buildings, I invite the Salvation Army Divisional Commander, Major Rob Kerr, to say a few words. Thank you.
Minister Birch, Minister Farbert, Mr. Jim Patterson, and to our friend Mr. Kirk Kitson, who isn't here today with us. This is indeed a special day. To see these new structures become a reality and come to completion is very exciting for us indeed. The Salvation Army core values are hope, service, dignity, and stewardship. When we look at these new facilities, we can certainly see how this supports our core value of dignity. Dignity means that we recognize every person's worth. These new structures will remind each person who enters and seeks shelter within their walls that they have value and are valued by the people around them and by the people of Bermuda. Providing a place to sleep in a safe, clean space is the beginning of a journey towards stability. These buildings and the services that we provide are not the solution to homelessness, but rather the first step on a journey for each individual who enters this space towards stability. But it is a vital first step. It is a place where choices are made. Providing a safe and comfortable space allows people to make better choices, to see possibilities, to understand that there is a better life ahead for them. We are so pleased to work in partnership with the government of Bermuda in this way. Together, we can do more than any of us can do on our own. By working together, we stand here today celebrating a new space where people who find themselves in a desperate situation for whatever reason, and every person's story is different, will have a safe place to stay. But that is not all. The government has provided this space, and the Salvation Army will then come alongside each individual to provide supports and counseling to work on stabilizing them and then making a plan to move them forward in their journey, moving them towards permanent housing and towards a life that is healthy and thriving in community. Today, as we gather here, we are not celebrating the end of a project. We are seeing a beacon of hope for many and the starting line for a transformed life. I am pleased to introduce to you Ms. Beverly Daniels, who is the Executive Director of the Salvation Army's Harbor Light and Emergency Housing Complex, and she oversees the operation of this location, along with the Harbor Light. Ms. Daniels will speak more now to the specifics of how these units will be used.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. And are we delighted and amazed by the handiwork that we see? Kudos to the team. Echoing the sentiments of Major Rob, I concur that this is an exciting day in the history of the Salvation Army as it relates to the shelter here on Marsh Lane. Like the birth of a new baby, there have been many nights and days, and yes, years, and anxious waiting as this project has come to fruition. And Keno Jacobs Farbert has been like the expecting father. Keno's resilience as the project manager has been tested to a high degree, but has remained steadfast in his resolve to complete this project with the high degree of excellence that he has become known for. Creative and sometimes almost impossible problem solving, complicated by our friend Mr. COVID, has been employed by Kino and his team. Our vision is to open a transitional living center, complete with case management that will house both male and female. Of course, they will be in separate buildings. We are determined, using the strength that each person brings, to work with our men and women as they experience transformation under our guidance. Policies and procedures will drive the operation of this new program, and it is a new program. It's not an emergency shelter. We will maintain our emergency shelter, but we look forward to offering transitional living, complete with case management and the intense involvement of our manager, Mr. Sean Thomas, who stands behind me, and our caseworker, Mrs. Marjorie Armstrong. They have come along at a very exciting time, but a very challenging time. But I have no doubt that they, working with the team of residential care workers and our community partners, will execute. To God be the glory. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, Major, and Ms. Daniels. At this time, we will entertain any related questions from the media. Any questions?
They want to see inside, like we do.